everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views, the first one of the year from the Nefarium on Thursday, January 5th, 2023. Daniel and I want to wish everybody a very happy new year and the very best of all good things for you and yours this coming year. And I do want to talk about what I think this year is going to be today with a review of three stories that kind of epitomize for me what is beginning to happen. And while I fully expect this coming year to be very bumpy and full of, the usual shenanigans from the usual crowd of people, I also expect it to be the year that their narratives really begin to break down. And we've been watching this process of steady erosion of their power and control and their increasing desperation to lock into place the most draconian and tyrannical measures. That will continue, folks, but also the other trend of the challenge to their narratives and the breakdown of their systems. I mean, the story of the COVID injections is breaking down. The narrative is breaking down very quickly with all of the athlete deaths and so on and so forth, which you'll notice the mainstream media is carefully trying to avoid tying the two phenomena together. And of course, they will be unsuccessful. So I'm calling this the year of the narrative and system breakdown really beginning to hit the trail. We'll see if at the end of the year this prediction works out. But that's my guess. And to bring this point home, I want to talk about three articles. But first, a little housekeeping. Our first vid chat this year will be on Friday, January the 13th at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time. It will be scheduled as 3 p.m. in the schedule. I think I'm probably going to have to start it early due to the fact that people will probably have a lot of questions and comments they want to talk about. That will be posted on the website this coming weekend. The blogs will resume on January 9th. So that will be next Monday. And an apology to all of you out there who've been pressing me to schedule interviews during the break. When I say that I'm taking time off, that means I'm taking time off even from scheduling things. And I don't want to schedule any interviews until after January 10th when I'm back on the job here at the website. So I apologize for those of you who've been very graciously and kindly asking me for interviews, and I'm not trying to put you off or anything. It's just I don't like to schedule anything during vacations until I get back and can look at the calendar and everything like that. So anyway, that's what's going on. Now, as I say, I think this is going to be the year of the breakdown not only of narratives but the system. And by the system, I mean all systems. Your usual systems of governance, ecclesiastical systems, cultural systems, information systems. All of this, I think, is going to be up for grabs. And I have three articles here that I kind of want to focus your attention on. We've been watching a growing development in the United States, to a lesser extent in Canada, of state or provincial rebellion against the dictates of the big central government in the swamp or in Ottawa. So I think this trend is only going to continue the more that the entrenched political elite, which is both the right and the left, folks, the more the entrenched political elite makes its desperate grabs for power, the more the pushback is going to accelerate. And in particular, the United States, we've watched the states pushing back in terms of passing currency legal tender resolutions recognizing specie and bullion as money and so on. We've watched some states begin to develop their own private state bullion banks, Texas being the first out of the gate, then followed by Utah, We're watching similar moves in Tennessee, currency resolutions in quite a few states, as a matter of fact. And now the latest trend is the nullification trend, to nullify either federal law or executive order. So there's two articles I'm linking here. The first is titled Fighting Back. These come courtesy of VT. Fighting Back, GOP-Controlled State Legislatures Looking at Bills on the Constitutionality of Executive Orders. This was published on December 28th at 2022. And I want to read just a couple of paragraphs from this article. Quote, Missouri State Representative Brian Zeitz is sponsoring a bill that would require state lawmakers to scrutinize some presidential executive orders. Similar bills have popped up in other states where Republicans control the state legislature: Alabama, Utah, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Iowa, and South Carolina have all considered bills looking at the constitutionality of executive orders since Mr. Biden took office. And that is true, and I'm going to be speaking about another trend that is allied to all of this nullification and currency financial pushback in just a minute. Another bill is under consideration in Texas, and again, this was published on December 22nd of last year. This article is titled, Texas Bill Would Create a Process to Review and Reject Unconstitutional Federal Acts. And let me cite just a portion of this article. Quote, under the proposed law, if the committee determines a federal election violates the Constitution, it would then submit it to the Texas Supreme Court for review. If the Texas Supreme Court determines the federal action violates the Constitution, the full House and Senate would then vote on that determination, meaning the full Texas House and Senate would then vote on that determination. Passage of the resolution and the governor's signature would constitute an official determination of unconstitutionality and would prohibit state enforcement of the act. And the subsections here: a federal action declared to be unconstitutional federal action under section 394.004 has no legal effect in this state and may not be recognized by this state or political subdivision of this state as having legal effect. Subsection B, the state and political subdivision of the state may not spend the public money or resources nor incur public debt to implement or enforce a federal action declared to be an unconstitutional federal action. And C, a person authorized to enforce the laws of this state may enforce those laws, including Section 39.03 of the Penal Code, against a person who attempts to implement or enforce a federal action declared to be an unconstitutional federal action. Now, this is coming at the same time, folks, that many states are looking to repeal their state income tax. Now, I come from a state, South Dakota, that has no state income tax. Everything is either sales tax or property tax. And the state, while small, has functioned very efficiently. Florida is a large state with no state income tax, and we've seen the rather explosive growth there. So growth does occur in these states with no income tax. There are a few others as well. And I suspect that this is principal reason number one that you're seeing these states considering the income tax. But, and I mentioned this in our quarterly review with Catherine Fitz, the year-end review that we just recorded a couple days ago, and I'm going to mention it here because she and I both think, and you'll hear about this in the quarterly review as well, she and I both think that given the inflation and the tax increases that are coming down the pike, that the tax revolt is around the corner. So we're going to be watching this year for more signs of tax revolt among the states. Now, what does Catherine mean by that? If you've been following her over the years, she has been trying to get people to understand that paying the taxes is feeding the beast. It's feeding our our own enslavement, because increasingly the government does not appear to be all that ready to observe either the Constitution nor any fiscally sane budget process and so on. And she has been advocating the placement of taxes in escrow accounts in order to pay the taxes but prevent access to those funds. And I really think with the state pushback that we're seeing in terms of state bullion banks and state recognition of specie as legal tender, and with the pushback that I think is inevitably going to occur from the same group of people concerned about where all this is going, you're going to see a similar pushback against central bank digital currency. Okay? I suspect that they will wake up and realize that they need to do exactly the same thing with the federal income tax. And that's when the push comes to shove. But I suspect you're going to see insights or signs or even memes indicating that this pushback is beginning to be circulated as an idea, and it won't take long for it to circulate before it becomes a reality. So that's my prediction vis-a-vis the pushback. You've got several areas to watch for: increasing reliance on state bullion depositories, an increase of the use, I would say, probably of just plain old bullion as a barter for real goods and services, which, again, we're going to turn to an article now which is very, very interesting. This was an article shared over the break by KM, and it appears, oddly enough, on CNN. We don't usually turn to CNN as a source for anything reliable, but this is a very interesting article, and it's got the usual woke spin feature to it, which may be a clue as to what's coming down the pike. The title of the article is UK, a town in the United Kingdom, launches its own currency. Now, we've been predicting that as the attempt to centralize and put into place draconian policies increases, as Mr. Globaloney continues to try and clamp down on the entire world, the more and more you're going to see these types of local reactions. So Catherine and I have also been predicting the rise of local currencies and regional currencies. We're certainly seeing that happen with the currency swaps among the BRIC nations. I think this is another trend that is going to increase, and I suspect rather dramatically this year. So let's look at this article, because I want you to clue into something here that is said in this article, because I think it gives us a clue on how Mr. Globaloney is going to try and head this off at the pike. Here we go. Quote, tired of soaring prices, and this is dateline Lewis, England, or Lewes, England. Tired of soaring prices in uncertain financial markets, a small town in southern England is fighting back with its own local currency. Tuesday evening, the wealthy English town of Lewes plans to launch the Lewes pound as complementary currency to the British pound. About 50 local traders have agreed to accept it, and organizers are selling the notes at a discount to entice people to buy them. If you spend £1 in a supermarket, campaigner Adrienne Campbell told CNN, it almost immediately goes out of the community, leaks away, and then isn't remaining in the community serving local people. Unquote. And continuing with the article now, organizers say the Lewes pound benefits shoppers by strengthening local shops and increasing a sense of pride in the community. For traders, pardon me, it increases customer loyalty, minimizes the cost of card-based transactions, and attracts attention to the town. You want to help out your local business, help them out by using cash. Don't use your card, because they lose a certain small percentage of money on each and every transaction, paying for the transaction fee, folks. So cash is the way to go. But to continue, for traders, it increases customer loyalty, minimizes the cost of card-based transactions, and attracts attention to the town. The loose pound also benefits the environment by keeping transactions local, thus reducing carbon emissions, organizers say. The loose pound is basically a voucher worth £1 that can only be redeemed at locally owned participating stores. Customers can buy it at several issuing outlets around town and trade it back for sterling anytime. Now, it's that little statement about helping reduce carbon emissions that suggests to me that we may be looking very possibly at the way that the Mr. Globaloney and all of his factions and the central banksters are going to perhaps try to react to this by selling the idea, literally, of a local currency helping to fight carbon emissions. So you can have your local paper money or your local medium of exchange, but for any regional or international transactions, you'll have to use their central bank digital currency. Follow me? This is what I think is coming down the pike, or at least what they are going to attempt. Now, here is what I suspect is also going to happen. That if they're trying to lay a trap with local currencies, I suspect that this is going to fail, because you're going to see more and more of these types of communities banding together to create regional currencies. And once people figure out how to couple their state or local bullion banks into the phenomenon of a local currency, the jig is up for the central bank digital currency. Because once you have secure, trusted media of exchange that are not electronic blips, that are not causing a climate meltdown due to the amount of energy it takes to harvest cryptocurrency, once you get to that point, then the whole idea, I personally think, of a central bank digital currency goes the way of the dodo bird. So this is going to be an interesting phenomenon to watch. The article goes on to mention that this little town in the United Kingdom has had local currencies before. We've seen local currencies emerge and disappear in this country, particularly during the Depression. But I suspect that you're going to see it increase now even more, along with all these other trends against the narrative and the system. So in other words, I think this year, while it promises to be quite bumpy and, full of the same shenanigans from the same people, I think it's also a year that you're going to see the pushback become much more organized, much more vocal. And folks, we haven't even touched on what I think is going to happen in terms of news and stories regarding nature, earth sciences, climate science, and so on and so forth. There's right now huge revolt in the climate science community. As you know, there's an ongoing revolt in the medical community against the injection narrative, and on we could go. So this is a year in which I think we need to keep our eyes peeled for any stories indicating rejection of the narrative and things going on. And that includes especially our bailiwick here on this website, news and stories about ancient science, ancient civilizations, and so on. As it looks to me, if you're following those kinds of stories, more and more people are waking up and realizing the standard academic narrative about ancient history and ancient civilizational accomplishment is just not making any sense. So this could be an across-the-board interesting year in terms of challenges to the traditional and standard narratives. Anyway, that'll do it for our first news and views from the Nefarium in 2023. The basic bottom line here is expect more of the same, but on steroids from the usual people of ne'er-do-wells and Mr. Globaloney and the people running the Nefarium. You can expect a lot more of that, but I think you can expect a lot more increasing breakdown of their systems and of their narratives. You ain't seen nothing on that score, and this is going to be a year that really, I think, touches off that process in a big way. Anyway, that's it. We'll see you on the flip side. Don't forget, the first vid chat is a week from this Friday. Our first blogs will go up next week, and I will put up the vid chat panel in the members area this coming weekend. That's it, everybody. Bye-bye. God bless. And for those of you contacting me about trying to schedule interviews, please contact me about that after January 10th. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Bye-bye, and God bless.